Hi there, folks. I wanted to spend just a few minutes here making the transition between community organizing, as we've looked at it for the last 2 weeks, and what is called community building, as exemplified by asset-based community development. And the person who makes that transition best is John McKnight, even though he was one of the people who founded asset-based community development. And to do that, I want to give you just a quick little history lesson, or for those of you who are old enough to remember this, a quick little history reminder. Right after Alinsky died, it was the golden age of community organizing. Young people who were uncomfortable, who wanted to make change, but didn't necessarily want to become part of some of the more violent and ideological groups of the time, like the Weather Underground or the Black Panther Party, flocked to be trained as community organizers. And some of the best community organizations that still exist today were founded in the mid-70s, early and mid-70s. It was a time of great community empowerment. But there was another movement going on at the same time that ultimately expressed itself in 1980 in the election of Ronald Reagan as President of the United States. Ronald Reagan had run on a sort of shrink government kind of platform like the Tea Party today. But he had been elected by a particular constituency that he felt very, very responsible to. And that constituency was something that came to be, people who came to be known as the Reagan Democrats. The Reagan Democrats were white folks, mostly, who had been Democrats or maybe still were Democrats, but they had, in large numbers, during the 70s, fled the cities in the white flight movement and moved to the suburbs, the bedroom suburbs that were built surrounding the city, so that they didn't have to live in the city, they didn't have to see the city, except maybe they went in there to go to work. But the superhighways got them in and out real fast. And they wanted nothing more to do with the city at all. They felt that the city was filled with people who basically took their money, sucked their resources up, and didn't do anything. Ronald Reagan actually ran commercials where he talked about welfare queens. The white flight movement and the Ronald Reagan capitalizing on the white flight movement, it was both overtly and covertly racist, and economically devastating to cities, because not only did the white flight folks take their tax base out to the suburbs and make it harder for cities to fund themselves, but the first thing Ronald Reagan did when he got into office was dismantle and disinvest from every program that shared any federal money with urban areas. Remember, they didn't give money. It wasn't like charity. Those were our taxes, and we were just getting them back. But that wasn't the way Reagan talked about it, and that wasn't the way that his constituency saw it. So what happened at that point in time was that lots of the institutions of urban neighborhoods followed these folks out to the suburbs. Banks did. Churches followed their congregations. And inner city neighborhoods, urban neighborhoods, the people who were left in them were the people who couldn't leave. And the institutions that had once served them were gone. And all there was now in a lot of the urban neighborhoods were service organizations, charity organizations, social service organizations, government handout organizations, etc. Another thing that happened at that time, and it's important to remember this, is that at the very same time white flight was happening, the global economy was getting underway, and the manufacturing jobs that were part of the urban base, especially in the north, the Rust Belt cities, left factories shut down and moved to Mexico, to the maquiladoras, or to the southern states where unions were right-to-work states, and therefore their workers could not be unionized. And so, in Chicago we lost 450,000 jobs during the decade of the 70s. So you combine the loss of an economic base from manufacturing jobs. By the way, manufacturing jobs were where you could get a good paying job even if you weren't highly educated or you were a recent immigrant. So we lost manufacturing jobs, and then we had this migration of people to the suburbs from urban neighborhoods. And it was encouraged by Washington and supported by Washington and disinvested from cities by Washington. Into that realm comes our two intrepid organizers, John McKnight and Jody Kretzmann. And they realized that this particular process, or series of processes, makes organizing much harder. If your bank president now is out in Schaumburg, and the bank isn't in your neighborhood anymore, how can you go pressure the bank president to give more local housing mortgages? How can you target your enemy? If he's not local, he's not viable, and he's not capable. Those were the 3 points. You can't find him. It couldn't do it anyway. How do you do a good, effective organizing campaign? And where do you look for your strength? And where do you look for your power? And what do you do now about the fact that most of the people in the neighborhood have their most powerful relationships not with each other anymore, but with service organizations, service professionals? And so that critique is the critique that John McKnight brought to the table in his book, The Careless Society, Community and Its Counterfeits, in which he addresses the question of how does the service system relate to community at all? Isn't it a false kind of community? Service systems don't care. They serve. They're systems. Care is, as John McKnight says over and over again, the freely given assistance and engagement of one person to another. So if you have a careless society that is structured mostly around service and the production of service professionals, this is destroying community, and we have to start looking at ways to rebuild community outside of these systems. And so in the book he attacks 4 major systems: the social service system, the medical system, the criminal justice system, and the education system. But I'm not going to make you read all of that because, well, first of all, I didn't require the book, and second of all, he says the same things over and over again. So I just gave you the part of the book that lays out his argument, and it has one of his most famous essays in it called John Deere and the Bereavement Counselor. Pay special attention to John Deere and the Bereavement Counselor when you read the PDF that's under McKnight, in the McKnight file, under Resources. Once you read that, and read all of those pages, read the whole section is called The Professional Problem. Then follow the directions below for the forum, and watch one more video, and I'll see you when I see you. Okay, I got this under 10 minutes. Onto YouTube with it, and I'll talk to you soon.